Welcome to the College of Education 10-Minute Research Break, a podcast devoted to highlighting research by Illinois State University's College of Education, faculty, staff, and students. So grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and take a break with us.
Hi, I'm Tricia Class. Today I'm talking with Tom Lucey and Tony Lorsbach, faculty in the School of Teaching and Learning. The article we will discuss today focuses on the conflict between the trend towards curriculum standardization and the ideal higher education teaching and learning environment. Welcome, Tom and Tony. Thank you for talking with me.
Thanks.
You argue that the current standardized teacher education curriculum limits the potential for students and for future teachers to experience multidimensional understanding.
I think by standardized curriculum, it's the idea that there's one way or one thing to know, and it's a thing that's delivered. It's not acted upon. It's not interacted with. It's, this is what you need to know. And, in some cases it's scripted. Examples, I think, from teacher education that we're dealing with now, rather than maybe when the paper was written, is just the mandates that, okay, where in your courses are you putting Danielson? Where in your courses are you putting RTI? Where in your courses are you putting Common Core? Without any discussion of, well, instead of RTI, why not talk about differentiated instruction? What are multiple models for those? That's not the emphasis. The emphasis is on there's this one thing, and that's what you have to implement. And as a result, our worry is that students will graduate and perhaps they'll know RTI reformed, and it'll turn into something else, and our students won't be any the wiser about making good decisions about what you can do to differentiate a curriculum.
I think that relates to the conception of what teachers should be. We have curricula that are being imposed, and our candidates are expected to accept it. However, they cannot dialogue about these issues, and from that point, they have difficulty articulating what the nature of their profession is and how that relates to the teaching of it. Especially now with Common Core, they're able to teach the processes for gathering and processing information. They don't have the knowledge of the material that they're working with to gather and critically understand the society in which their students do.
You provide a detailed discussion of Morris's 4 areas of experiential fulfillment. You just select one of these 4 areas and share with the listeners the details of what you see the relationship with teacher education.
Let's talk about the concept of morality, or what Morris refers to as the goodness in life. So if we're talking about morality, we're talking about spiritual health. Morris talks about spiritual, healthy people who are in harmonious relationships. And it's not about avoiding problems, it's about building strength. And so one of the challenges that we have, especially in education, is that we prepare candidates not to rock the boat. And that's how you keep a harmonious society, when in essence, that's not keeping a harmonious society, that's keeping a structure that's organized by a select few that control the resources of society. If we're interested in truly having a harmonious society that is democratic, then we need to bring all stakeholders to the table, value their conversations, and not just emphasize the ideas of select.
Where do you see current higher education programs compared to this framework?
I think the reason we put the chart or the table together in the paper was to give people some alternative perspectives of looking at curriculum. Where we're at in higher education now, I think, if I can just read Grundy's definition of a technical interest, a fundamental interest in controlling the environment through rule-following actions based upon empirically grounded laws. It's an interest in controlling pupil learning so that at the end of the teaching process, the product will conform to the eidos or the intentions or ideas expressed in the original objectives. I think that's the definition of what curriculum is today. There is no practical or emancipatory interest. There's no interacting with, trying to reach a mutual understanding, or in any way making the curriculum transformative. We have a long way to move. Grundy wrote this in the 80s, worried about where curriculum was and where it was going. And 30 years later, it's even more entrenched in the technical than the practical or the emancipatory.
Yeah, I think if you look at higher education in general, you see a decreasing number of degrees that are awarded in the humanities, which means that you have a lot of students who are pursuing higher education for practical and technical purposes, but they're not appreciating the development of knowledge in and of itself. And this connects to a society where we find people in economic terms. We look at the bottom line in terms of money and quantitative issues, but we don't look at individuality and the humanness of our decisions. And so our higher education system is very challenged by that.
Your major conclusion is that this standardization is a form of learned professional helplessness. Can you expound on that?
I think at an early age, we learn to obey authority in schools. We learn to suppress personal goals and fulfilling goals. And I think as we grow, we, as adults, tend to not question things. If that's, well, the authority is telling us what to do, we have to do that. And I find that's true of candidates and graduate students in their roles as teachers in schools, that their role is to just implement what they're told to implement. There's not been that practical or transformative component in the curriculum so that we question the assumptions behind things. One of the things that Tom and I are concerned about is the undemocratic notion of Common Core, that it was basically decided upon by an elite group, basically telling us that it's going to lead to career and college prep without an ounce of evidence that it's going to do that. There is no pilot studies. There is nothing other than we're supposed to believe what we're told. We would just like our candidates to start questioning those sorts of things. But in order to prepare candidates to do that kind of questioning, they need a different kind of curriculum and different kind of interactions so that they don't have the helplessness of, where do I start?
We're not saying that standardization is a bad thing. Professions need standards so that way you have a common pattern of practice from which to compare different professionals in the way they do things. I mean, in teacher education, standardization derives from a political or economic framework that is inconsistent with the nature of child development. If you look at research on child development, young children are very capable of talking about controversial issues, but it's something that's discouraged in elementary education. If you look at the way children learn and how to count money, they learn in terms of fractional relationships. But the way that money is taught in elementary education mathematics courses is by learning the absolute values of currency. So we have inconsistencies in our elementary education curricula with patterns of child development. That results from a standardization process where curricula is derived from a political and economic framework rather than from what we know about child development.
The learned helplessness in higher education, Tom and I published another paper in the Journal of Teaching in Higher Education where we examine that a bit. And the data suggests that there is a degree amongst younger faculty of not questioning things and just sort of putting your head down and getting the job done and doing what you're being told to do. It was the senior faculty who were more skeptical and more questioning and more resistant to the standardization that's being introduced.
It was a very thought-provoking article, and I hope it encourages others to read your publication.
Thanks.
The full citation for today's article is Lucey and Lorsbach, 2013, Beyond the Technical, Interpreting a Fulfilling Curriculum. Published in The Educational Forum, Volume 77, Number 2, pages 176 to 191. The citation can also be found at the website education.illinoisstate.edu/faculty_staff/research/podcasts. Join us for future Research Break broadcasts.
This podcast is sponsored by Illinois State University's College of Education, where we strive to assure that all students realize the democratic ideal through our teaching, research, and service to the field of education.